Today on Dr. Phil. Do any of you think white people are sometimes discriminated against?
This happens in a systemic way on our most elite college campuses.
If you make a decision based on the color of someone's skin, isn't that racist?
No, you're trying to create an opportunity.
They're not hiring based on talent. So what do we do about heart surgeons, airplane pilots? How far do we want to go with this?
Let's do it.
Have a good show, everybody. Here we go.
This is a safe place to talk about hard things.
Stand by. We'll count you down.
Today is going to be a changing day in your life.
5, 4.
Get ready to take care of you. Good morning. We have a very sensitive topic today, and I want to start by getting your thoughts. Do any of you think white people are sometimes discriminated against? Raise your hand if you think so. So you do think that white people can sometimes be discriminated? Or do you feel that white privilege is still alive and well, and that no one who looks like, well, me, should be complaining because we can't be discriminated against? Raise your hand. Okay, that's about a third, maybe. Well, what if I told you there are white people out there who feel they are being discriminated against intentionally and are even filing lawsuits because of it? Well, recently the news has reported allegations of discrimination towards white people in university admissions. Similar claims have been reported in the workplace too, with white people saying they have not been hired or promoted, and some claim they've even been laid off because of the color of their skin. So does reverse discrimination exist, or are these reported instances being blown out of proportion? Take a look.
A former top executive with Novant Health says that he was fired because he's a white man.
Suit filed yesterday in California alleges Google discriminates against men and white employees.
The Supreme Court has ruled repeatedly that race is an acceptable factor in college admissions. A group called Students for Fair Admissions is accusing elite colleges of discriminating against Asian American and white students, using illegal caps on enrollment and higher academic standards for admission.
Harvard has denied the claims, but the High Court agreed to hear the challenge to race-conscious admissions policies at Harvard and also the University of North Carolina.
According to documents, admissions officers did discuss applicants in racial terms. Princeton President Chris Eisgruber will soon welcome a new freshman class, but every year his admissions officers are considering more than just academics.
This is part of our policy. We do take race and ethnicity into account in building a diverse campus.
Race cannot be removed effectively from an application just because it is so central to so many people's identity.
We're not against that. Someone should not be providing their racial information, but how is that going to be used?
Well, I want to welcome conservative author and TV host Danielle D'Souza-Gill and Distinguished Professor of Education at San Diego State University, Dr. Luke Wood. So welcome to both of you. Now, let me start with you. Is it possible for white people to be discriminated against because they are the majority and discrimination involves power? Is it possible?
Absolutely. It is unequivocally possible. It happens all the time. This actually happens not only in specific instances, but this happens in a systemic way on our most elite college campuses. And I would also say that this is happening not just in education, but in the workplace.
Well, is it justified, though? Because if there has been disparity and if there has been discrimination, if there have been minorities that have been excluded for years and years and years and years, is this the way to start to bring some balance and diversity back to those universities and workplaces?
Absolutely not. Affirmative action has been going on for over 50 years, so this has been happening for a long time. And even now, we've actually seen that it's gotten worse in the sense that race relations are so poisonous, and many people on college campuses actually feel like because of all of this that's happening, they feel like they're being pitted against each other.
Doctor, what do you think?
Well, I think I would very respectfully disagree. I certainly don't think that white people are disadvantaged in college admissions. In fact, I would say it is the exact opposite, which is why there are policies and practices in place now to try to alleviate the historical burden. It's like if you ever played Monopoly before, right? Imagine like you have a person who's playing Monopoly and they get to go around multiple times, right? And then like halfway through the game, someone gets to enter into the game. And then because they get a turn, right, then the accusation is, well, somehow that game is unfair. The kind of accusation, what we would say is reverse racism, we really just view it as what we call race sliding. Race sliding is what happens when gaslighting is racial. And essentially, if you look historically, colleges and universities have prioritized admissions for students who are white. Why is that? When you admit a student, it's oftentimes based upon your grades, high school grades, and your test scores, ACT and SAT, which are being phased out due to COVID-19. But if you think about it, the SAT and ACT have historically measured access to resources, the neighborhood that you grow up in. It is not a measure of a student's drive, a student's motivation. It is really a measure of their access. And ultimately, we know that when things measure access, they really measure white privilege.
Well, you say that there can be prejudice, but not discrimination. What do you mean?
So, well, I would separate prejudice from racism as being two different things, which is a little bit different.
Do you make racism and discrimination as two different things?
I would say that I would see prejudice and discrimination as more falling in the same realm. So I would say this: you can the priorities that are provided within some of the corporate incentive programs that you featured there, right? Those priorities are really not priorities. What they are is they recognize that historically, those companies have not done a good job within their senior leadership ranks. They got 7%, 8% of their senior leaders who are from minoritized communities. And so what they're doing is they're creating access to opportunity by having programs. And these are small programs. So what they're really just doing is trying to open a door. And as you try to open a door just a little bit, the accusation is, well, somehow that's not fair. But you know what's really not fair is the history of racism and segregation in this country, which pervades to today, which is the reason why we see college admissions and companies doing these things to try to create more opportunity. But even with those opportunities that are created by these programs, they're not disadvantaging white people. They're simply creating an opportunity.
But if you make a decision based on the color of someone's skin, isn't that racist?
No. If you're making a decision based upon the color of someone's skin, is that racist? I would say no, because in this particular case, what you're doing is you're trying to rectify a historical wrong. You're trying to create an opportunity.
We have to take a break. We come back, I want to hear from the audience about what these two have had to say. Coming up, our country, as our country become obsessed with race, is the media to blame? We'll talk about that when we come back.
You're making the assumption that black students are academically inferior, and they're not.
No, you are.
You just said that they don't belong there.
I'm talking about the policies that you are defending right now, not based on their skill set, but based on the color of their skin. So you are assuming that they are inferior.
"37-year-old BJ Choco-Ingram altered his appearance by shaving his head and then claiming on his medical school application that he was a black man. As part of the deception, he also used his middle name JoJo. Why?
There was statistical evidence that an African-American student with my grades and test scores was very likely to get admission to medical school, whereas an Indian-American applicant was unlikely to get in.
He says his plan worked.
I did it because I was desperate to get into medical school.
Well, based on what I read, see in the media, talk to people about, this is a topic that almost everyone feels strongly about one way or the other. I want to hear what the audience has to say. Yes, sir, in the back.
Yeah, if you're white, someone can discriminate against you, but there's no systemic basis to it.
But if it's becoming part of the university admission process, if it's determining hiring practices, dismissal practices in industry, is that not systemic?
You could nitpick and find little instances on both sides. But I think if you look at it as a whole, then you begin to understand where it's coming from.
Who else has a comment? Yes, sir, in the back.
My name is Dan, and I think it's great that you try to fix some of the inequities that have happened in the past, but I don't think it should jump to the front of the line when you're going to college or you're trying to get a job. I think it's important that we address it very early on, where a lot of the major issues are happening in the families of some of the ones that are maybe disadvantaged, or if they're having trouble in school, it started at the elementary school level, where once they get to the admissions process or get to a job interview, it's based on your merit.
Candace, are we compromising standards
Yes.
if we do that because we haven't fixed the problem down the line?
That's correct. It is the policies are harmful also to the people that they purport to help, and we have all of the evidence there to look at. When you artificially place a Black American into a school in which they do not belong based on their knowledge, doesn't mean that they go on to get A's. In fact, there was a Black adjunct professor, you guys have definitely heard of him, Dr. Thomas Sowell, who was teaching at Cornell University, and he found that the majority of the Black American students that were there were on academic probation. Now, these students were some of the smartest in the nation, but because they were artificially placed amongst their peers at Cornell University, they were failing on academic probation. These policies have never helped Black Americans. It's just basically policies that are put in place to make people feel good, right? I feel like I'm doing something when in fact I'm actually creating harm. You either know the answers or you don't.
Well, sharing that comment and joining our conversation is political commentator and activist Candace Owens. And also joining us is Professor and Chief Academic Officer for the University of Southern California Race and Equity Center, Dr. John Pasquarella. And you're right about Thomas Sowell. He also said equal opportunity policies are against racism. Affirmative action is racism under new management. He said it just doesn't work, it doesn't help, and never has, and he tracked this over like 50 years. And he's a Black professor, by the way. John, what do you think about this?
I think that, each college admissions committee that comes up with policies to consider someone's racial identity or racial background and experiences as one of many factors in the constellation of competitive factors that are considered is a good thing in institutions that have historically excluded people of color from admission to their universities.
Can I just ask a question? How do you consider it when we're telling you factually, in effect, it is a bad thing for the Black students?
What are the constellations of factors that involve them thriving or not? Is it solely due to their race?
No, it's due to their intellectual capabilities, which is how students should be judged. And I do want to say
And is that limited to just their race?
It's not limited to just their race, which is why that would be an equal policy if you allowed people to be judged based on their merit, on their merit and not based on their skin color.
Yeah.
It also, there's something about it that's very patronizing. You're a Black person, so I assume that you can't get on this school based on your merit. I don't think Sasha and Malia Obama are people that have struggled and therefore should be allowed to get into the college universities on a higher basis than white kids that have worked harder than them, especially Asian Americans, which we never discuss, and are probably the most discriminated against in this country when it comes to universities.
When you say, hey, we have Black students at a particular school who aren't performing at that school as well, the immediate assumption that you're making is, well, maybe it's because they're not smart enough, they're not good enough, or they don't belong here. Whereas it could be about the experience that they're having at that institution. Professors who believe that they're not intelligent enough, that they don't have the capability to do the work, that they see them as criminals, deviants, dangerous, up to no good, or they talk about them with the they statements. They're lazy, they don't care, they don't really belong here. They're only here for the financial aid.
I'm giving you actual facts.
No,
right?
I'm giving you actual facts based upon extensive
and you can say, well, maybe they
research
just
that's
don't
been
feel
done.
good. But that's not the case. I mean, I went to university. I did not feel good, right? I didn't pull the best grades in high school, probably got into a better university than I should have gotten into based on my performance in high school. It wasn't because of my feelings. It's because I wasn't focused on it. And that, we're talking about a cultural problem, what's going on back at home, as was in my circumstance. And none of that is because of institutionalized policy. It almost seems like you guys refuse to accept that, Black students aren't performing well. You feel like you have to have this burden of responsibility when in fact, if you actually wanted to help, you would look at the facts, re-examine the fact that it's not helping anybody, it's not helping Black Americans to artificially place them into universities, and you'd make effective change.
But you're making the assumption that Black students are academically inferior, and they're not.
No,
They're
you
some of
are
our most
actually.
brilliant students that we have.
That's the basic. No. That you are making the assumption that they are inferior.
You
It
just
is
said
why
that they don't
you want
belong there.
policies I'm talking about the students that are based on the policies that you are defending right now, saying that we should have these policies that let them into these universities, not based on their skill set, but based on the color of their skin. So you are assuming that they are inferior.
Why are there so many discrimination lawsuits against companies lately? How are they being handled? We'll talk about that and find out what the answer is to this debate. And is there a third factor involved that I want to bring up? And we'll be right back.
We look at Black students and Hispanic students and Native American students.
We are inferior,
and we pity them.
That's what makes my blood boil. I mean, it's just, I am not less than you because you are white. I don't need you to look at me and feel bad for me because of the color of my skin.
David Duval was a part of Novant Hospital's management team in 2015 when they announced plans to diversify. 3 years later, Duval was fired and replaced by 2 women, one African American and one white. And his lawsuit said he was fired because he is white and male.
And a jury just agreed, awarding him $10 million.
You're doing a good job in being fired for a racial reason. That's illegal.
Well, we're discussing the very sensitive topic of whether or not white people are discriminated against in education and the workplace. Is this a made-up issue in the news, or is there a good reason why some people feel this is real? Now, I want to introduce Mala Epinobi, who is a conservative podcast host and a public speaker. Mala, you've been listening to everything that we've been talking about here. I said there may be a third factor here. They don't have the opportunities in some of the schools they're coming from to get prepared, and that has to be addressed, but we can get back to that in a minute. But what do you think about what we're talking about so far?
Right, I'll talk to your example that you gave about the Monopoly game and a white person being able to run the track twice over and a Black person starting after that. The solution is not to then pick up the Black person and run them around the lap 4 times. The solution is to fix the game and make that equal, which would be a race-neutral future. We should not be looking at race when it comes to college admissions at all. And when it comes to things like affirmative action, if we truly said we cared about minorities, it wouldn't be disproportionately affecting Asian Americans, as Candace said, like it is now. Why do we not care about that minority group?
We absolutely care about all minority groups, just like we care about all students. But I think everyone has a significant misunderstanding of these policies. They're comprehensive or holistic in nature. This is one factor among many other factors. And then we say, across all those factors, looking at these and taking them in tandem, is this student best prepared? Because it's not just about your intelligence, that's important, it's also about your drive, about your resilience, about your ability to overcome challenges, and that's what makes you successful.
Even with those factors taken into account, Asian students and white students are discriminated against when compared to their Black counterparts. How is that the case? And it seems that with affirmative action, we've dictated we care about Black students, we care about Hispanic students. These are the minorities who are going to benefit from this, and Asians are not, and Native Americans. But the through line is not necessarily socioeconomic status. It doesn't seem to be resources. It seems to be that these are the minority groups that we feel bad for. We don't feel bad for Asian Americans because they have a culture of high academic standing. They have a culture of drive and of facing adversity. We look at Black students and Hispanic students and Native American students.
We are inferior,
and we pity them.
That's what makes my blood boil. I mean, it's just, I am not less than you because you are white. I don't need you to look at me and feel bad for me because of the color of my skin. And that's effectively what you're doing every time you take an application and you say, oh, well, this girl's Black, so I kind of feel bad for her, so I'm going to put her at the top of a line. It's just not necessary. I believe, right, that Black Americans are capable of performing in the same capacity as their white peers. You two don't actually believe that, because if you support affirmative action, you are basically saying that Black Americans cannot do it on their own.
No, what I'm saying is that there's a history of racism and exclusionary practices that instead we're reducing it all the way down just to race. And what these admissions practices are actually doing is saying, no, there's a constellation of factors that we're considering in the holistic review of this application.
So remove race from the applications.
Is basically making it about race. You're saying these are the black people, these are the white people, these are the Asian people, these are the Native American people, as you mentioned. But as one of the audience members said, what about people who are of mixed race? You know, I'm of mixed background. What am I supposed to mark on an application? Am I supposed to mark multiple boxes? And plus,
Mark
if you are
black.
painting people
Black.
as an oppressor, if you're white,
That's
and
a
then
terrible
saying
thing to
that
tell
you're
someone to do.
oppressed,
Well, it's the
if
truth because
you're
you believe
of
in affirmative
color,
action. So I said Mark Black. If you're a
then-
mixed student, I'm in an interracial relationship, so I can speak to this. I have a son that's half white and a son that's half black and a daughter that's half white and half black.
Okay.
They're going to mark black because I know that there are people like you at the universities who will say, well, because this person is black, I'm just going to let them in.
No, they're going to mark black because they're black.
Well, they're half black and half white. They're both, right? So it is true. You overlook
I'm half black and
right.
half
So
white.
you
I'm black.
overlook
That's how it works.
interracial students.
But
so what do you
why?
mean? Why are you saying they're going to mark black
I've
because they're
socialized in our
black?
society.
So the answer is if you can't, I mean, you can mark both. Can you mark both? I don't know if you can. What are you
Yes.
going to look at that applicant as a little bit less because they're half white? How do you guys figure that out?
How they look at it is, again, holistically
I
across
love
a
that
number
word.
of different
I love a
factors.
buzzword. I love me a buzzword. Holistically and racial consciousness.
Oh yeah, reverse discrimination. There's a
It's not
buzzword.
racial discrimination. It's just discrimination. It's just racism if you're judging people on the basis of their skin color. I don't know why this is so difficult. I mean, you have to go through an extraordinary amount of school. You almost have to have a PhD to not be able to see this.
We're talking about the holistic admissions, and we're talking about how that, and I know you don't like that word, but that's just true.
it.
That's what it's called, or comprehensive, you can call it that too. Ultimately, what those are doing is looking at multiple factors. Again, it's trying to get at drive and determination.
remove
Let me
race.
finish real quick. So someone mentioned earlier that, well, we should be, this gentleman here, we should be thinking about how there are other challenges that are happening earlier on. I would argue that those other challenges earlier on are a function of school systems from the very beginning that serve to disadvantage these students. So the very fact that a student gets to the point where they've made it through the K-12 education system, which has disproportionately suspended them, expelled them, placed them in special education, told them that they're not smart enough, that they're not good enough, that they don't belong here, and they've gotten to the point where they've been able to apply for college, and the college sees, hey, despite this, they've been committed to community service. Despite this, they've been committed to being involved in leadership opportunities. Despite these things, look at all they've done, and for a college to say, oh, that's a bad thing, no, it's a positive thing, because what we want is people who are going to go out into society and improve it.
Hang on, up next, we're going to talk to a male comedian who says a management agency told him it's not the time for white men to get jobs. He caught that comment on tape. What else is on this recording? We're going to find out when we come back.
Tyler Fisher, you've had a recent run-in with this affirmative action hiring problem that we're having right now.
I worked with the agent who emailed me, and I said, why no auditions? You know, and he just emailed me and he wrote, tough out there for white dudes. And then not long after, removed me from the roster. And I had a complete mental breakdown. I'm just thinking, how is this happening? And how are people so comfortable talking about it?
Comedian Tyler Fisher claims he has been turned down by 3 agencies because they said they just weren't looking for white men to book at this time. Tyler, thanks for being here.
Thank you, thank you. I identify as a Latino female now, so just adjust my pronouns. Yeah, so I've been in the entertainment business for 17 years, and I think what we're not talking about is children right now. Thank God I had about 5 years where this was not happening, where race was not pounded over your head. This is destroying people's lives.
Yeah.
You know, the manager that told me, I can't work with you because you're white, he was a pawn, you know? And so it's so sad because I feel so bad for kids who won't have that chance. They're gonna go, oh, I'm told I'm white, so I'm not gonna go for it. You know, what would you say to a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old, no matter what their race is? Should you, like, what would you actually tell them? You know, should you give your job up? And let me ask you directly, do you think it was justified for me to be told, we can't represent you, you don't have the chance to now compete for jobs because you're white? Yes or no? Was that okay or was that not okay?
I think that what is described
Yes
by
or no?
you.
Don't give me your little
Let me
bubble
finish.
wrap.
What
Yes
is
or
described
no?
by you, someone telling you that you can't get that job because you're white, does not sound right to me.
Well, let's hear what was actually said. He's
It's
not
illegal.
just making this
But
up.
let me say this.
He recorded the call with an Asian. He claims turned him down for being white. So let's listen to the call.
Is it a policy, like explicit, that they're not taking on any like white men, or is it like case by case?
On-camera talent, stand-up, probably not. No.
Okay, so no white men are allowed for on-camera stuff.
I guess it's right now where it stands, but like, yeah, it could change in a year depending on if casting directors, that's not their feedback anymore, or not even casting directors, you know, studios, whatever it may be, where it's like, this is what we're looking for.
I don't know.
More diverse would be the actual.
Yeah. Right, it'll go so far until a white person will have to be the diverse hire.
Which is happening. Which is happening. There's racially discriminated stand-up comedy shows in New York City. I did a show the other day, and they said, "Are you doing the next show?" And I said, "Yeah." The guy said, "I didn't know you were gay." He said, "This is a gays-only show." And so that's why Hollywood sucks right now, by the way, because they're not hiring based on talent. What do we do about heart surgeons, airplane pilots? Like, how far do we want to go with this? Do you want the best heart surgeon, or do you want somebody who you think may have had it bad as a kid, or maybe their great-great-grandfather? I mean, it's ridiculous.
I think it's important to state how affirmative action actually harms everybody involved. So when you put a black student on a campus or put them in a job and you've given them, preferential treatment in order for them to be there, you've actually robbed them of knowing they've gotten an opportunity based on their own merit. So they're questioning themselves and their place in the environment. And for all the non-people of color who are surrounding them, they now get to look at any person of color and go, I don't know whether or not you got this job based on merit or based on preferential treatment. And I know this to be true because I'm a biracial woman who has those thoughts now because of the culture that we're living in.
The solution isn't to have more racism, it's to get rid of racism and treat people based on their merits.
Well, I think having these kinds of conversations is exactly what we need to be doing more of in schools.
But you know what? People are afraid to comment on this because they'll get labeled and hammered and canceled.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the audience. I think there are a lot of people out here that I'm on national television. You kiss my ass. Kiss my ass. You think I'm going to raise my hand and talk about this? No, thank you. I don't believe I will. How many of you kind of feel that way? Yeah, that's what I thought. Coming up, are layoffs across the nation only targeting white people, or is there more behind that story than the headlines suggest? We'll talk about that after the break.
Former Google engineers claim the company is a hostile workplace for employees with conservative views. Also, the company discriminates against men and white employees by unfairly favoring women and some minorities. James Damore was fired in August after posting controversial opinions to an internal Google message board.
He is someone who has had excellent reviews, superb reviews, and he hears not only are hiring preferences going to go to women and minorities, but so are promotional preferences. And what he says is, wait a minute, I am just as equally qualified, so why should I be shut out?
Well, a lawsuit has been filed over a new teacher retention policy at Minneapolis public schools that critics say could result in white teachers being laid off first. Now, joining us virtually is a Minneapolis school teacher, Alexis, who wants to explain what has been happening in her district. So, Alexis, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
There's a lot more to this than the headlines, correct?
Absolutely.
What is the issue? Because there is it has to do with seniority and
underrepresentation.
Right.
Those are the words that were used.
Okay, and the fact is the vast majority of the teachers there are white, correct?
That's correct.
And so if you just go straight proportionality, there are naturally going to be more white teachers released than black teachers because there are just more in the pool.
Well, if you even look at our last accessing cycle, there were roughly 150 or so teachers that were laid off. 50 of those teachers were black. So you're always going to have, anytime you're dealing with a layoff situation where you have, let me just give you the exact numbers. Minneapolis public schools, there are a total of 237 Black teachers. Of those Black teachers, 147 of them are tenured versus 2,652 white teachers, of which 2,129 are tenured. So clearly there is a disproportionate amount of white teachers versus Black teachers. So the current policies that are in place favor continuing to have the same policies that produce these numbers.
Yeah. So what part of that does favor retaining the Black teachers?
It's not a black and white issue. It says underrepresented. So it protects teachers from underrepresented populations, which underrepresented could be based on sexuality, it could be based on gender. So to just cover it in a racial identification, I think is wrong.
Dr. Wood, you say that white teachers cannot conduct classrooms as successfully as Black teachers, but that's really only true with students of color, correct?
So what I would say is that when we
What's
look,
what you did say?
Well, what I say is that when we look at teachers who are the most effective with teaching our most underrepresented students, they tend to be individuals who come from underrepresented backgrounds. But the reason that they're also effective also with white students as well is because oftentimes your faculty of color aren't solely focused just on the cognitive, but also on the relational. Because relationships are a foundational precondition to effective teaching, learning, counseling, advising, or any support practice. Said differently, it doesn't matter how good you teach. If you don't have a relationship with a student, you won't be as effective as you could be. And our faculty of color and staff of color tend to do that.
You're talking about the art of teaching. You're talking about building relationships. They are actually failing when it comes to actually teaching these kids things. This is why
who's failing?
I'm telling you, inner city communities. I'm talking about Baltimore, Minneapolis, Los Angeles. All of the inner city communities are failing Black children because they're focusing on the art and not the actual facts. In Baltimore,
We're
as
talking
just
about
one
teacher
example,
diversity, though. You're referring to the full density of the school.
I'm talking about the art of teaching, which you're saying they're better for the student. They're actually not better for the student, right?
So you're saying that faculty of color are not
Across 5 schools in
effective?
Baltimore, which is an inner city, which focuses, I suppose, on the art of teaching, they couldn't find a single Black child, that was proficient in reading and writing because they think that having somebody who looks like you somehow means that it's going to be better. And also, please, I have to clarify this because when we talk about these quotas and someone says, well, there's this many white people teaching and there's this many Black people teaching, welcome to America. Black Americans, okay, I don't know how everybody's doing in their math these days. Black Americans represent just 13% of the population, okay, right? White Americans represent 60% of the population, okay? So if you walk into a room and you find that there's only 13% of the room that is Black American and 60% of the room is white American, you are actually walking into a room that is holistic, a room that actually represents America. You can't just say we want Black Americans to represent 90% of people in every single room. It just won't work
But in
mathematically.
her district, there's only 5% of those teachers are
Alexis, you want to say
faculty of
something?
color.
I actually do. Candace, let me let you know that I am a teacher. And I just had a conversation with a student last week. We're, like I said, half of the staff at the school where I work, we're Black or teachers of color. And we are a school where students come on a, we'll say, temporary basis. It's not a destination school. So in preparing the student to transition to their new school that is a mainstream school, one of the things that student said is that I want to stay here. I want to stay here because there's more Black teachers here and I feel more comfortable around Black teachers. So I just want you to know that it's not necessarily a matter of the students, the art of teaching that makes these students feel more comfortable, but there is research and science that shows that when you have a teacher that looks like you in your classroom, you do better. And also, I just wanted to say with respect
But
to
they're not doing better. That's my point.
with respect to the numbers, that's because you see the numbers, right? You see that there's over 2,000 white teachers who are failing our students, versus the 237 in the district that are getting cycled around to different schools based on hiring
That's just
policies.
incorrect. That's just incorrect. You
No,
are
it's not.
saying
It's
something
not
that is not
incorrect.
based on a study and not based on fact. Just because a teacher looks like you does not mean that you are going to perform
not.
better in that class based on your academic abilities.
Coming
Perhaps they'll
up,
give you
how
an
do we
A.
address how do we address inequities without discriminating against another set of people? We'll talk about that next. Well, we're back talking about discrimination and can whites be discriminated against? And there's some debate about whether that's possible or not, whether it's systemic or not, universities and in industry. Amalda, we were talking about what's happening in industry as well. And Coca-Cola is getting a lot of attention for some of their sensitivity training with their employees. And your comment was that in part, they're teaching some of their employees how, I say some, the white employees, how to be, quote, less white.
Absolutely.
How the hell do you do that?
Well, she took me out tanning this morning, so she just kind of walked me around Hollywood.
Oh, you should be a comedian.
Well, I'd like to make the point that it's not just Coca-Cola that is engaging in this sort of activity and
I'm
these
just
sort of
using that as an
trainings.
example.
Yeah, it's a great example, and it's happening in corporations and in schools all across America, and they are effectively teaching people. Coca-Cola said, quote, how to be less white. They assume that things like being a perfectionist, engaging in or having a response to objectivity, having a neutral or a nuclear family. These are inherently extensions of whiteness.
Listening to John Mayer.
According to Coca-Cola, these are extensions of whiteness, and they actually engaged in trainings where they taught their employees how to be less white.
Diversity isn't just a bunch of people looking different in a room, it's a bunch of people thinking differently in a room. And I know that there are schools in which they are training people they believe to be inclusive when in fact they're training people to feel bitter against one another. And this is the problem with the American education system as a whole. They want this emphasis on feelings and not facts. You hear people going, well, I just want to feel good, right? I just want to feel like I have a black teacher that understands where I come from because I'm a black person and this is where I come from. I want these students to actually perform well. I want a society that is based on facts and not on people's feelings, because what you have as a result is an education system that is failing the students that it purports to be trying to help, and there's no question about that.
Right.
And just going back to your earlier comment, I had a professor, a teacher that I loved in high school, and I got an A in that class. I learned absolutely nothing. I had a teacher that I absolutely hated in AP English, and I learned the most in that class. This is what we need to focus on. Students actually engaging and being challenged and learning, not feeling wholesome and feeling conscious.
It's creating segregation because
segregation.
children are afraid to say anything. If I say the wrong thing in the wrong tone to the wrong person with the wrong skin color, I'll go to jail or lose my job.
But that's
I'm
because people
30.
are more worried about being called a racist than they are about actually being racist.
I think we need
But being
No.
called a racist,
Irony.
it can really be a problem in this day and time with social
Dr.
media.
Phil, I was called racist for my discrimination lawsuit by other comedians, just for standing up for discrimination. So
Yeah.
it is really
Yeah.
hard to.
And that's terrible. It seems to me that if we're going to create this kind of balance at the university level or in industry, then we're going to have to create opportunities early on so everybody comes to that place where they're competing for the place in the university or the job with some kind of competitive equality. They've got the same educational background, they've got the same opportunities behind them. And if we don't fix that, I don't think we're ever going to get what we're trying to artificially create. Look, I want to thank all of my guests today. I know this is difficult to talk about. Thank the four of you guys for being
Thank you, guys.
informative and civil with each other and very helpful. Amalda, thank you. Thank you so much. For more information about today's episode, or if you'd like to share your story, log on to drphil.com. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. You know where to find me. You can follow and subscribe to my podcast, Fill in the Blanks. I talk about critical information that all of you are facing right now. Parents are telling me you're concerned about what your kids are being exposed to in school, not just reading, writing, and arithmetic, but also what's being taught socially. And you have a right to know. You should ask. You should find out. You have a right to know. Also, listen to Robin's podcast, I've Got a Secret. You can check them both out on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll see you next time. Thanks for being here.